My name is Pam Kersner, and I live here in the city of Santee, and I love it. I used to work at Miramar, and I tried to ride the bus to work and found it was going to take me an hour and a half. And then I still couldn't get to Miramar. I think that the idea of having buses for everything puts extra time away from families because you're sitting in a bus for an hour and a half to get only halfway to where you need to go. And I didn't vote for that. I voted for 52 and 125 and 67 for the freeways to be fixed and widened and improved. I didn't vote for more buses.
Thank you.
Nicole Munoz Prulo.
Hello, council members. My name is Nicole Munoz Prue. I'm a longtime constituent of Santee and a graduate student at the University of San Diego. I'm here today to voice my support for SANDAG's transportation plan. As a graduate student, I have spent the past year researching air pollution and the direct adverse health impacts it has on communities. In April 2019, the American Lung Association released its State of the Air report and identified San Diego as the 6th worst metropolitan region for air pollution in the United States. And in early 2019, the World Health Organization named air pollution as one of the greatest threats to human health in the world. San Diego County and its unincorporated areas has a greenhouse gas emissions problem and has failed time and time again to meet minimal standards. As city council members, your leadership and the decisions you make impact many people's lives. We need to invest in public transportation so that mobility throughout the county is accessible and competitive in a city that is saturated with car culture. Ignoring this opportunity to expand public transit in Santee and throughout the county will no doubt result in increased health degradation and environmental degradation. As a young person living in Santee, I often wonder what Santee leadership wants to be known for. Does Santee want to be known as a community that maintains the status quo, or does Santee want to be known as a community that is forward-thinking and led by leaders that are capable of taking on adaptive problems? Thank you.
Ann Barron.
Good evening, Ann Barron, a Santee resident. I've been here since 2011. I also want to thank Spark. I love the parks here. I'm in the parks all the time. I miss Mass Park. Looking forward for that to come back. And I really urge you to support SANDAG in their effort to create this 5 big move forward, kind of consolidation and connecting all the different hubs. I ride mass transit all the time, and when I can't get there, I had to ride my bike here because there was no bus here tonight, so I rode my bike. That's quite a hill. And you also don't have bike racks outside. I just want to make a little point about that. But to be able, what I'm really excited about with this plan, and I've heard the plan several times in other meetings, what I'm really excited is it's going to create a west-east corridor, which is great for me because I go to Poway all the time. I can't get there readily by bus. I go to downtown all the time. I can get there really super easy. I just take the green trolley. I'm downtown. It's amazing. I don't even drive downtown anymore. So really urging you to hear tonight's presentation and to support the SANDAG plan. We really need it. I am terrified about climate change. Santee, we're a little above sea level, 500 feet. But it is going to have a huge impact on our whole coastal climate if we don't start solving the problem. So I urge you to support. Thank you.
Elizabeth Walk.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Walk. I live on the west side of Santee, and I'm really looking forward to the presentation tonight. I came specifically to hear the new ideas that SANDAG is presenting. I'm really excited about it. My husband has worked at the airport for 25 years, and we've long bemoaned the fact that there doesn't seem to be a coherent system in place for him to be able to get to work. And most major cities have a very direct route for many residents to the airport. I know that the 52 is really the top priority for Santee residents, but I'm looking forward to hearing what SANDAG has to say about the downtown and the airport connection as well. I think there are a lot of people in Santee that would use public transportation if it was a viable alternative to a car in terms of time taken. We've researched him commuting, and he would be a tough customer because he can drive his car. He's an off-peak commuter, so he could drive his car to work in less than a half an hour, but he would still be willing to take public transportation if it was a viable alternative in terms of time. So I think it's something that Santee and San Diego area really need, a cohesive plan, and I hope that Santee is open and supportive to participating. So thank you.
Van Collinsworth.
Good evening, Council. Van Collinsworth. I have not read the SANDAG presentation, or SANDAG plan, so I'm actually looking forward to seeing the presentation tonight. So I'm not going to endorse either way at this point, but a couple points I would like to make is we have seen what expanding freeways so that we can have sprawl development does. That's what LA is. Hasn't worked out so well. Same thing in Texas. You keep expanding freeways, and they're just continue to be gridlocked. So if this plan is something that actually builds a first-class public transportation system that people want to use, and that can relieve the demand for freeways, whether it's 52 or 125 or whatever, then I think that concept has some promise, because the model that we've been on, which is just expand freeways for sprawl development, that doesn't work. I mean, how many freeways have we built here in Santee? We're still complaining about the freeway. So I think we need to take a look seriously at what's being proposed here, and hopefully maybe we can add some positive input to make it an excellent plan. Thank you.
No further speakers.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to our presentation. I'd like to introduce Hassan Akarta. He's the Executive Director for the San Diego Association of Governments and team.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members, City Manager, good evening. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Mentos for his service to SANDAG. Sometimes we see Ran there as an alternate. But to be fair to Mayor Mentos, he's not only a leader who fights hard for what Santee and his region needs, but he's a voice of reason when we needed that most. What you're going to hear today from my team is a very early ideas, what we're thinking for the future. You won't hear a lot of detail. We've been at this for a couple of months. I just want to, before the team starts the presentation, say a couple of things. One is, I've been here 6 months. I believe this region needs and deserves a transportation system that's balanced for the future. That if you choose to take transit, like some of the speakers alluded to, it shouldn't take you more than if you drive. It should be as convenient, as fast, and it should be as safe as if you sit in your car and drive. If not, you shouldn't waste your money on transit. I believe that very strongly. The biggest principle for us is, if you want to build transit, make it as convenient, if not more convenient than the car. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and money. And I don't blame anybody today by saying, I'm not going to take transit because I cannot get to where I want to go in reasonable amount of time. You're going to hear some examples from our chief economist, Ray Major, today, why transit doesn't work in San Diego. Having said that, this plan is not about transit. It's about a transportation system that's balanced. That if you want to drive, you still can drive and will have a better drive. It's also about a plan that needs to meet the federal and state requirements, that this region must meet regardless. And short of meeting it, we will be losing tens of billions of dollars, and we cannot move anything forward. I understand there is public policy debate raging. I welcome that. I think that's good. That's healthy. Whether it's agreement or disagreement, I will tell you, I am blessed to lead a team of excellent engineers and planners who I think is going to deliver for you a graced, balanced transportation system. And I hope all of you in leadership give us the chance to finish this before you judge it, one way or another. And it's okay. At the end of the day, it will be the board decision. And if they say no, that's their decision. But we're still in early stages. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Colleen and Ray Major, and then we'll come back for a question and answer at the end.
Thank you, Hassan, and thank you, Mayor and members of the Council, for having us here this evening. The leaders of this region have a tremendous opportunity to do something really bold, and we are at a time right now where we have great examples of things that are already happening in the region, with the extension of the Blue Line trolley from Old Town San Diego up to UCSD that will connect all the region's major universities by rail. As we've talked about, the emerging technologies that are available to help us really enhance the investments in our transportation network are something that we can really take advantage of in this plan. We also know that continuing to build roadways will not solve all of our problems. The region is continuing to grow. With that population growth comes the continued need for people to drive. So the whole goal here is, how do we provide compelling options for people in this region to travel in ways that are competitive in terms of time, convenience, speed, and price, in ways that not everybody has to drive for every single trip. We also know that we are at a time where we have to make sure that we are meeting the state-mandated climate change goals, and this is reducing greenhouse gas emissions per person. This is the law of the land. This is what we have to meet in order to continue to receive state and federal funding for important transportation projects in the plan. So this is where the bold vision comes in, and we've been afforded this tremendous opportunity by the SANDAG Board of Directors to really look at this in a whole fresh way, and using data to drive the decisions, looking at the data that tells us where the challenges are in our communities and what the new solutions might be to solving those challenges. And with that, I'm going to invite Ray Major up to share with you and give you a sense of some of the data that we're using to help drive the decisions that we plan to bring forward in the plan later this fall. So, Ray.
Thank you very much. One of the opportunities that we had with this plan was to actually fundamentally go back to the beginning and try to figure out what would be a real solution to the transportation problem today. In the past couple of plans that we've done, we've kind of moved projects around based upon budget and schedule, and we kind of moved them from before 2035 to after 2035, et cetera. But they really didn't answer the fundamental question, which is, will this actually solve the problem by the time we're done building it, given the fact that we're going to see another 20% increase in population in the region? And so Hassan challenged us to use data to really fundamentally look at how San Diego's laid out and what it would take to develop this transportation plan. So when we take a look at the San Diego region, we know we have an urban footprint. That urban footprint was built after the automobile was invented, and so we know that we're very flat. This map over here shows you the density of population within the San Diego region. It's mostly the western 1/3 of the region, but what you'll see is that there are areas that are more dense than others. But we're a very large region too. And sometimes we think of ourselves as a small area, but we have 3.3 million people who live here. We're going to have another 700,000 coming by 2050. We are the nation's 5th most populous county, and if we were a state in and of ourselves, our county would rank number 26, so it would be as large as Oregon. in terms of the economy. So it really is a very large area that we're working with. And we generate a lot of VMT. Currently, it's about 84 million vehicle miles traveled per year. That's expected to go to about 103 million vehicle miles traveled per year by 2050 if we don't do anything. Okay, where we work. One of the things that we did is we took a look at where we work. And most of the trips that people take, about 65% of the trips, are mandatory trips. They're either trips going to work, or they're trips taking their kids to school, or they're going to college. So that's about 65% of the trips. So it's important for us to solve the issue of how you get people from where they live to where they work. So we're using data to identify that. We also take a look at data to look at where people are coming from. So this particular map takes a look at the Kearney Mesa Employment Center. So we have this information for the entire region. We've also done this work for Santee. Each one of those blue dots represents a person who works in the green area, which is the Kearney Mesa East Employment Center. And what the map on the right-hand side shows is how far out Kearney, you have to go to capture 25%, 50%, and 75% of the workforce that goes to Kearney Mesa. And so you can kind of see the area that that's coming from. The interesting thing here, if you take a look at it, is that in Kearney Mesa is that most of the people who work there are actually located south of the 8. So if you take a look at Sorrento Valley, it's the largest employment center that we have with 129,000 employees in there. You'll see that in the upper right, you'll see that up where the green area is, on the upper right, that's where most of the population who works in Sorrento Valley lives. When you take a look at Kearney Mesa, what you see is something different, okay? It's mostly down in the south. And this area over here, these are the areas where people live who probably are using the 125 or the 67 to connect to the 52. So this is where a lot of the traffic is coming from that's on the 52. And later in the presentation, I'll go over some specific information that talks about just how much traffic is actually generated by people who are driving through Santee. When we take a look at, do we have any real options? We're taking a look at the data, and we're objectively looking at alternatives to the automobile. On the right-hand side, what we see is at the peak time, how far you could travel from the Kearney Mesa Employment Center in 15 minutes and 30 minutes. And you can see it covers a good portion of the populated part of the county. And if you take a look at the right-hand map, that shows you how far you can get with transit. Okay? So transit is not really a viable alternative for people who live in Kearney Mesa. Many of those people are coming through Santee to get to their jobs. When we take a look at Santee peak period, this is what it looks like. So this is from the trolley station, and it says how far could you drive in 30 minutes and 15 minutes, the green and the yellow, and it shows how far you can get using transit. Okay, again, there's not a real option for people who either work or live in Santee to use an alternate form of transportation. You can get to downtown on the Green Line, but it'll take you 2 hours, and not everybody has that amount of time. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Colleen to talk about the 5 big moves, and then I'll be back to kind of talk about how that looks here in Santee. Thank you.
All right, so back to where we live and work, and I know the mayor and I believe Councilmember Hall had a chance to visit the Vision Lab, and this is something that Hassan set up as soon as he got to SANDAG. We reserved a conference room, took out all the conference tables, and put up a whole bunch of maps to really start looking at this data, to look at what could the solutions be to these challenges that we have in the region. So just kind of starting with where we live and where we work, and when you start to put these two areas together, they really match up. They match up together. And so we're talking about the highest density areas where people live and where people work being in roughly the same place. And then as you look at this in a little bit more detail, you realize that we could connect all of this actually in sort of a loop system. And this presents a tremendous opportunity for us to fully connect our highway network, fully connect our transit network in a way that gives people travel options. So this has led to the 5 big moves. The 5 big moves consist of complete corridors, transit leap, mobility hubs, flexible fleets, and the next operating system. And when we talk about complete corridors, we're really talking about every one of our highway corridors thinking about improvements to the highway, improvements to transit in that area, and bicycle and pedestrian improvements as well. Then when we talk about Transit Leap, that's the next big investment that we need to make so that we can make that area bigger that the transit area covers and help give an option to people to free up capacity on our roadway system. The third big move, mobility hubs. These are the activity centers that would be connected through high-speed transit. Flexible fleets, the fourth big move, are the smaller vehicles that help make those neighborhood trips and get people to and from high-speed transit. And the operating system, the fifth big move, is really about the brain of the system, the technology that helps make all of this work. So these are just some examples that I'll share with you on the thoughts in a complete corridor, thinking about how multiple modes of transportation come together. That's the complete corridor. The Transit Leap, to really speed up transit. Today, our trolley moves at an average of 45 miles an hour. To really make a difference, that needs to be higher speed like we see in other cities, 80 miles an hour. So commuter rail service that goes much faster, not as many stops, and gets people where they need to go. The third big move, mobility hubs. Mobility hubs would come in different scales and sizes. In more dense areas where there's a lot of development, there would be multiple modes of transportation coming together. This is an example of a mobility hub that would be in a more suburban setting. So you'd get off high-speed transit and have access to car share, bike share, other types of transportation to get you around the community. Flexible fleets, this is really thinking about autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, shared vehicles. Again, these are the smaller type vehicles that can help get us around our communities. And then the next operating system is, again, the technology that helps make all of this work together. So with that in mind, we did some initial thinking, looking at the data, using the 5 big moves and putting that together into some initial critical connections that need to be made in the communities. And the east-west connections are certainly in an area that need to be given some significant attention. And so those are identified in the green areas shown on this map. The green lines are really our initial ideas on where complete corridors need to be thought through. Other lines are really trying to connect people to job centers in Kearney Mesa and Sorrento Valley, connecting east and west Sorrento Valley with transit as well. And so these connections will help get people where they want to go, when they want to go, and being able to do that in ways that they can get there how they want to get there. And again, this starts to show how we can make this overall connection. So with that, Ray's going to talk more specifically about some specific things in Santee that we have sort of been able to talk about as a staff team, and we certainly are excited to share this with you. So Ray.
Thank you. So who uses 52? That's a question that I asked myself for probably the last couple of decades as I drove there. I have one kid who went to Santana, the other one to West Hills, and so getting back on the freeway and trying to get downtown, I mean, I do that on a regular basis. So one of the things we wanted to look at is where does the traffic come from? When you take a look at Santee as an economic and population center, what you have is an area that creates jobs, so it pulls traffic in, people who work there, and there are also people who live there who need to move out. So you have this inflow and outflow from Santee. And so the numbers that I'm going to show you reflect that. And these purple lines really show you the volume of traffic that is due to Santee people going in or going out as it relates to the jurisdiction, to the city. And what you can see, obviously, is that the 52 is one of the heaviest used routes. There's about 5,700 people who live in Santee. There's about 11,000 jobs in the core area where you have your employment center. And most of those jobs are in retail, food service, construction, and manufacturing. So the other interesting thing is that probably about 10% of the people who work in Santee live in Santee. The people who live in Santee typically work outside of Santee, and so those jobs that are in Santee are filled by other people who are coming in. So that's the flow that you see each morning on the freeway. So if we zoom in a little bit, and we take a look at really the traffic volumes and who's really using the 52. And we can do this for any freeway, and we do when we're doing our analysis, but I'm showing you the 52 because I know the sensitivity with the 52. But when we take a look at the 52 at Mission Trail Summit, so at that point no additional cars can really get on, about 32% of those vehicles either are starting in Santee or ending in Santee. So Santee is their destination. The rest of them are just passing through. So there's almost 100,000 vehicles that pass that summit each and every day. So this is ADT, stands for average daily trips. When we take a look at the SR52 between Mast and 125, about 23% of the traffic there is Santee residents. When we take a look at SR52 at Cuyamaca, it's about 80,000 cars that travel there, and only 31% are from Santee. When we take a look at the 67 at Bradley, there's 93,000 average daily trips on that road, and about 27% of those are related to Santee. And then finally, and I just want to show you this statistic because this one was very interesting, about 62% of the traffic right after Grossmont College, there's 68,000 average daily trips, are related to Santee. And the interesting thing there is when you look a little deeper, there are a lot of people who get off in Santee, so they're counted as a Santee trip, but then they get right back on the 52 en masse to get over and that's why you see there's 96,000 going over. So they're cutting across. So we have the data that shows how people travel through here. And so where are they going is really part of the question. And when I showed you this map, in many cases, you'll see a lot of these people are going to use the 125 or the 67 as their primary route to get to Kearney Mesa, which is where they work. And what ends up happening is that they either come up one of these two freeways, and then they're on 52, blocking your highway, right? Because the 78% of the people, they shouldn't be there, right? They need to get around Santee. So when we take a look conceptually what's going on, and we take a look at the 2015 regional plan, the one that we have currently adopted, there are improvements on the 52. We have 2 managed lanes that are called out for on the 52, and as soon as we build those, we will suck even more traffic onto those 2 managed lanes, and there would be some relief, but very little overall benefit if you think about how much latent demand there really is for that particular freeway. And also we have a purple line, and there's some other improvements too, but these don't directly impact your area over here, so I'm not going to go into them more deeply than that. So when we re-envision what could be done in Santee to try to fix what's going on, and we take a look at the 5 big moves and how we would implement them, it looks something like this. The first thing that we would have to do is to build out these complete corridors where there would be an option to the automobile on these corridors. So that would be the high-speed rail. That would be dedicated lanes for either managed lanes or for buses or for other forms of transit. And then we also have the high-speed rail. So across 52, we would have to get people across here faster than the trolley. So this would be a candidate, for instance, for some type of higher speed rail, getting people to not only Kearney Mesa, but Sorrento Valley, which is the next biggest employment center. And then on top of that, what we would do is layer these mobility hubs. And these mobility hubs would be the place where you could get on, much like a trolley station, but the concept is a little bit different because what you're able to do at those mobility hubs is to get these autonomous shuttles or vehicles that would allow you to get to the last mile. So those are the flexible fleets that would be in place. And if we implemented these flexible fleets at the mobility centers, what would happen, as you can see, is there would be a lot of people who now all of a sudden have an option or an alternative to the automobile if they wanted to come across to Kearney Mesa. So currently, I showed you what our transit looks like. There really isn't a very good option. With something like this, we believe there's a much better option to have people take an alternative form of transportation. And again, we don't need to move everybody off of the freeway. What we need to do is move enough off to get back to free flow. Because a lot of times 52 is fine. It's just during those peak hours when you have to move people when they're actually going to work. So with that, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what's next with our efforts. In this summer, we started a webinar series on the 5 big moves. So today was the first one that we held. There are 4 more. I think we're going to hold them about every other week for interested citizens to listen in on what these are. We have experts who talk about the concepts and how this works. It's not just SANDAG staff talking to you, but we're utilizing experts. We'll have a framework together with projects and programs and hopefully some type of rough pricing by November. And then we hope to have the plan adopted late in 2021. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to Hassan for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. In case you're wondering what's this is the white star there is the potential Grand Central. And all this green line hopefully is the highway and transit coming into this mobility hub will be the biggest. So with that, Mayor, council members, we'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and make my comments first. And this is not going to be anything new to you or anyone else. When this plan was revealed for the first time for the Board of Directors, I found that there were some things that were lacking, to be quite honest. And the fact that it's a concept and not necessarily a plan may suggest that there could be things lacking and that we should have conversations regarding what should be included. And during my research, I found that that this plan that we saw today, even though it made a reference to a complete corridor, the congestion management of the freeway just wasn't spelled out. To this day, I still require, for me, when I go to the Board of Directors of SANDAG and I hear finally a plan or a concept or something that eventually has even money attached to it, I'm gonna have to hear about freeway congestion management. And when I talk about that, especially for the 350 folks, I'm not talking about necessarily expansion or things of that nature. What I'm talking about is if I have a footprint, and let's say it's 150 feet across, and I only have 2 lanes in each direction, and it's impacted to the point where people are not moving at a speed, which makes the air healthy, then I have to find a way to make it healthy. And I have to do that many times while I'm waiting on some of the other transportation ideas to come to fruition. And so, because sometimes that can happen sooner. And so if I'm in that footprint, and that means I add a lane on either side of it, or a HOV lane, and there's a lot of things that you can call these things, look at them, and whatnot, then that's something that we need to do. If that means restriping to create more volume so that we move vehicles faster, then that's what we have to do also. So the colleagues that I have stood with to talk about, we want to see highways included in this plan, are not opposed to your ideas of transit. As a matter of fact, we think that there's a lot of good ideas, but we need just more information. And I think that's going to come on a later date. And if it doesn't, then we get to jump on your bones again and tell you, no, you need to bring us more information. And quite frankly, I'm going to continue to be outspoken about that because I think it's what has to be heard for the people that we represent. And so I do appreciate you coming here and sharing this. I think there was a little bit more information in this presentation than the first one I heard. Okay, so what that tells me is that you certainly are listening to the people that are asking questions and the people that are demanding better answers. Especially when you start talking about needing to make sure that we follow Federal Highway Administration rules and regulations and California law, specifically Proposition 111, and its requirements of single vehicle occupancy being reduced and traffic congestion mitigation also being handled. And you mentioned that right off the top, so that's something I appreciate. But it doesn't necessarily leave you off the hook for me demanding more and asking for more. So
we expect you to, sir.
Thank you. Okay, who wants to go first over here? Okay.
Everybody's scared. All right, so Roy?
Ray.
Sorry, Ray. When did your kids graduate?
I had one daughter who graduated from West Hills last year, a son who graduated Santana 2 years ago, and a daughter who's going into West Hills next year as a freshman.
Okay.
So I still have 4 years of the 52-125. So
Good. Glad to hear that. And the reason I ask that is because, as you mentioned with your stats, a great population, or a great amount of the population that clogs up that specific area right there is from outside the city of Santee. The by far vast majority of it, and still yet citizens don't understand that. They think it's because of all the development that's happened in Santee, or which really is the lack thereof. But they don't understand that it's the advent of apps like Waze and things of that nature that are driving people to get off the highways and use our city streets, and then get back on the 52 at Mass Boulevard. So that being said, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for pointing out that our highways still need attention. They still need attention, guys. One of the second biggest issues on the 52 is the fact that we have the landfill right there. And we get a lot of trucks from the landfill that hop on the 52 and try and hit the summit and crest the summit. And if one's going 30 miles an hour and the other one wants to go 32 miles an hour, they'll get into the next lane over and clog up 2 lanes. And then you get one person in the fast lane that wants to do 55. And now the entire 52 freeway is completely congested, and it's backed up all the way onto our city streets. So having a mass transit / truck lane only would be way better than having a bicycle lane that has maybe 5 people a day that traverse that.
Yes.
And mostly for recreation, not going to and from work. Because, let's face it, you're probably not going to ride 15, 20 miles on a bicycle and then walk into the office.
Absolutely true.
That's just the reality.
And I can tell you that when we look at the modeling data and we have information on the speeds and number of vehicles for almost every point on that freeway, one thing that we saw when we did our initial modeling is that the 52, especially going west, is where we had the hardest problem modeling, because the model looks like it should be going a lot faster, even with the volumes of traffic. And a lot of it has to do with the climbing of the trucks.
It absolutely is.
So, I mean,
it's large vehicles, the commercial vehicles that can't traverse that grade at a normal speed that a regular vehicle can. So being able to have them in their own lane and opening and making that even mandatory if possible, that would by itself expand the 52. That would probably be the most significant thing in the world to do on the 52. But beyond that, as the mayor had already pointed out, a lot of the issues that we're talking about with poor air quality and all that stuff is because people are stuck in that traffic waiting, and so they're spending more time on those freeways and polluting the air more. 78 less. When I was an alternate on SANDAG, I recall the number of 78% of mass transit is subsidized. 78%.
It is actually 80%.
Oh, now it's 80%. That's so much better. Thank you.
Yes.
80% of mass transit is subsidized.
Right.
And you're talking about building more mass transit because that will get more people riding. Hold on, I'm not done. That'll get more people riding. Why not use technology? And if we want to make this a green thing, say, okay, well, how about instead of spending 80% of those funds, the same funds that you're using to have buses that have a capacity of 50 people with 3 people in them, the trolleys that have capacities of 60 people to have 20 people in them. Instead of using that money to subsidize that, how about putting that into the private sector and subsidizing things like rideshare, like Uber rideshare, but you can only use electric vehicles. And now subsidize those people, so now they're going from point A to point B. They're not just going from they have to drive or walk or ride their bicycle to get to mass transit, and then they take mass transit, and then they get off of that. Now they have to find their way to get the last, like you said, the last mile or 3 or 4. They can go from point A to point B. It's not going to be as fast as taking your own personal car, but it's going to be way faster than waiting for mass transit. The technology is already there. It's already able to group people. And if it was subsidized in some way, I think that would be way better. On top of that, you'd provide more jobs to more individuals because these smaller electric vehicles can hold 5 or 6 people. They will actually get a good wage by doing that on a daily basis, probably similar to what people are making on a bus on a daily basis. And you're putting more people in jobs, getting more people from point A to point B, and doing better to ride share than the buses, the trolley, or the trains are doing all together.
Can I address that, sir?
Please, now.
Thank you, council members. A couple of things. One is, yes, there is 80% of transit riders today are transit dependent. What you're going to hear from SANDAG is not a system for transit dependent. It's a system that actually, if not as convenient as the car, shouldn't be. Now, you mentioned something important. You mentioned Uber and Lyft.
Uber rideshare is what I said.
What's that?
Uber rideshare.
Uber rideshare.
Or something of that nature.
So right now, Uber has a 1.16 per person, including the driver. So pretty much every one of us is running in an Uber by themselves. That's going to eventually increase travel. Having said that, Uber is losing 40 cents on the dollar. So in this case, it's subsidized by corporate America and not by the public sector. So my point is, we need to find a model. You're absolutely right. We need to find a model that works, that the convenience and the cost match at one point. But I also want to address, Council Member, your point and the Mayor's point. We need to add capacity to the highway, no question about it. The question we're debating is how. Is it by building one managed lane each direction in the 52? I can tell you this doesn't work. We'll feel good about it for a couple of months, maybe 3 months, and we'll be back to where we started. You know, in Houston, they built a 26-lane highway, the biggest, largest in the world, 13 lanes each direction for 4.5 miles, became the most congested in the first few months. So we need to add capacity, no question about it, and technology is going to play a huge role. Connected vehicle technology is going to come in. I believe it's going to add capacity. Adding managed lanes on the 52 is going to add capacity. But for us, adding capacity does not always translate into building more lanes, because if we approach this from building lanes, we're not going to get there. Adding capacity, using technology, using managed lanes, some cases like you mentioned, rightly so, maybe reserving some of this added capacity to rideshare vehicles or connected vehicles. I believe we're talking the same thing.
I don't.
We don't have, maybe you don't, but we don't have the detail for us to say, here is the plan, like Mr. Mento said. In November, we'll have some detail, and we'll have some cost information, and you might say, it's too costly. And I can guarantee you this. What we're putting here on the table is more costly than just adding a lane each direction in the 52.
But the people voted already for a specific purpose for those funds. And now you're trying to divert those funds into an entirely different manner. Okay. That's not what they voted on. It's not what I voted on. Okay. And it doesn't serve the purpose, in my opinion, of taking care of the green resources that you're looking to take care of. It doesn't take care of getting people from point A to their actual destination of point Z, B, whatever you want to call it, in a reasonable time frame. And it doesn't take it, and you're not leaning on the private sector, or the public sector rather, to the private sector to do what it can do better than the private sector. And you mentioned, I said ride share. You keep talking about Uber Direct, which is 1.1. In LA, that's where they started, LA and New York, that's where they started the ride share program, and it's doing exceptionally well. It's doing exceptionally well because it does that very thing. It gets people from their door to their door in a way faster and more reasonable manner than driving themselves or taking public transit. And if more and more people understand that, and if you could subsidize it using the same funds that you're talking about using on mass transit that already is shown doesn't work, I'm completely lost why we're not even looking at that so much further and deeper.
And just a couple of things. So Mayor Minto sits on the SANDAG board. There were nobody, I don't have the authority to divert fund from anywhere to anywhere. So there were no such thing ever happened at SANDAG saying take this money from highway and give it to transit. I'm not saying that in the future the board of directors is going to discuss priorities, but the idea that we transfer money, unless Mr. Minto tells you that we did, I don't remember the board ever taking action.
Not taking action, but that's the talk.
The talk, sure. We all talk about different priorities. This is the plan. Sir, I will say this. I wish I had more detail to tell you this is what we're thinking. You mentioned the ride share, Uber and Lyft. That's in LA. I was in LA for many years, and I've seen this program, and still does not answer the question, how do you make either a ride share program or a transit as convenient as the car, because otherwise people won't take it. Now, the last thing I would say on this, don't judge transit by what we have today. We admitted from the beginning of the presentation what we have today doesn't work. We need to find a different way of building transit systems to complement the highway system, because frankly, if we take 5 or 10% and put them in the transit system, that creates more capacity in the highway too. But thank you for your comments. They're very good comments.
Hassan, let me clarify something, and I think just clarify for Rob also, because Rob's on the right track, and actually you're on the right track too. And here's the thing. When this was first presented, there was a sense that we are not going to do any more highway projects.
I said that.
Everything that has been projected or proposed in the past is gone. And that was the impression that everybody got. So when you talk about that, then that means, I think to the actual common person, they're going, wait a minute, that means if you're not doing any more highways, but we have this big pot of money, then that big pot of money is going to be used for all this stuff over here. And what Rob's talking about is the exact same thing. And what he's saying, and that other people have said in the community, is that we never voted for this money to be transferred over here and only worked on transit items. And I know that subsequent conversations have opened up that said, oh, well, that's not what you really meant. And you didn't really present the highway side of it. And that's why I keep advocating for this to come back to the board of directors, is so that it's memorialized in an actual meeting where everybody has the understanding whether or not money is going to be used for transit in place of highway congestion mitigation measures. And I think if we can somehow get that memorialized, whether in writing or in testimony or in some fact like that, then people can have a sense of, good feeling about the fact that what they said they want, they're going to get. We're just going to find some other ways of making it work, because we're not going to stop today looking for money. That's why we have to comply with all the laws. We have to make sure that we comply with state law, federal law, and that's how we get money. And it's good that we have never gone after just Transnet money to make for projects. And I think that's something else that has to be made clear, that this is not just about, I don't know, let's say $300 million sitting in a bank account somewhere. This is about finding another $300 million or another $300 million from state and federal. So now you got $1 billion sitting around. That's what it's about, and I know that we've been successful in even leveraging higher than that. But I think that the people that voted on Prop A, Transnet money, have to be reassured that this is what's going to happen, that they're going to actually get the best of both worlds. But we're not going to know until, September or November of any kind of cost, and that's when we're going to start talking about where's that money coming from. And I think we have to hear that money is coming from a balanced place. And if it doesn't, You're going to have problems at the SANDAG board, I think. So,
Mayor, you just hit something important. So, for us to compete for money, we have to have project shovel ready. For us to have project shovel ready, we have to environmentally clear and design and build. That's why I'm going to go to the board of directors in August and tell them, we do have about $250 million of federal and state money, plus about $40 million of Transnet money. I'm going to go to the board director. I said, this project and some of the federal and state money have some specific uses. This money will not build, and this is the money expected to be there in the next 5 years. That's all the money that actually we have in the next 5 years. I'm going to ask the board of directors, say, let us design, finish, plan, and clear environmentally some projects so we're shovel ready so we can go for the federal and state money. Short of that, this region will be sitting idle until sometimes in 2035 when Transnet really starts. Because right now, all the transit money is mostly doing is paying the bill. In the next 5 years, we will have this $300 million I'm talking about. By 2048, total $2.3 million after we pay the bill. Most of that $2.3 billion comes after 2035 in 15 years. So when people talk about money, it's like there is money and we divert it. There is no money. But you're right. Once in August, the board have to make a decision how best we use this money we have available to us, which projects we clear. Is it the 52? Is it the 78? Is it the purple line? This kind of discussion is yet to take place. But there were no such discussion taking place because there were really no money to talk about.
Got that?
All right.
Do you have some more?
Yeah, one more thing. Well, so thank you for stating that real quick, but canceling meetings and not bringing this forward to the whole board of directors at SANDAG does not fare well to making it seem like you're doing something that's very transparent, number one. Number two, using the term traffic mitigation efforts, highway traffic mitigation efforts for these funds, that's an easy guide to say anything, trolley, bus, all that stuff. You could use all of the money for that. You're saying, well, we're mitigating traffic on the highways. Yeah, you're mitigating it by 4 or 5 people that utilize public transit, while the tens of thousands that sit on the highways and freeways are cursing at us because it's our fault. So being realistic with the biggest bang for the buck is what needs to be done. Talking about, well, we hope that maybe someday maybe people will start doing more of this when we know statistically that they're not, because they want to go from point A to destination. And there's simple opportunities out there already for that. It seems disingenuous to me that you're saying that, well, no, we haven't really told you the story. Why haven't you told the board of directors a story so they can tell us a story and bring that back?
Okay, sir, I just have a question. Which meeting you're referring to that we canceled?
There's been 2 board meetings canceled.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with this. There were no items on the agenda, actually. In any case,
this is the biggest case. This is the biggest thing that everybody's concerned with that I hear from citizens, not only in Santee but all over the county. This is the biggest concern. So, SANDAG is San Diego Association of Governments.
Correct.
It's not just when it says San Diego, it means San Diego County, not just downtown San Diego.
Just for the information only, canceling a meeting has nothing to do with us, doesn't want us to communicate with the board. It's just there's no items on the agenda, and to bring 21 people into a meeting that there's no item is probably wasting their time and putting them on the, a lot of stuff. But has nothing to do with us not wanting to give the board information. We're always ready. I'm ready to come to this council every other week if that's what it takes. But no, I don't think we ever thought even of denying information to the board of directors. And Mr. Mentos knows that. I don't think that would be the purpose of canceling a meeting. But usually the canceling of the meeting, we call the chair and vice chair. We say, here is the items. Your choices, come, have the meeting or cancel it. And we cancel it based on the fact there's not enough item to cover. Now, do I need to go back to the board of this? Of course, but do I want to go to them and give them this presentation? They hear this. I want to give them more detail. I want to give them cost information. I want to give them what this means to them. So, and you know, these things don't happen overnight. You know, we've been at work since April, 2 months. So we need some time to put some meat on the bone, and we'll be happy to come back here to the city and give you more detail.
I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Hello, Hassan. We actually did meet before.
Yes, we did.
East County Economic
Yes.
Development Council,
Yes.
and we did the tour.
Yes.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
To the hot seat, I guess.
Thank you.
No, sincerely, welcome. And
Appreciate
I
that.
think everybody up here is excited to hear bold new ideas. We're a forward-thinking council, so we definitely want to hear, you know, your vision for the future. Myself, I really like to know where the analytics come from. So when we talked about the data and how you know where people are coming from and how they're getting there, I'd like to, you don't have to explain it all tonight because I know that's an in-depth process, but I personally would like maybe to connect and hear more about how you got your data.
Absolutely.
As you know, the 52 is a major corridor for goods and services and a big chunk of the workforce in East County and South County. And we know we have a bottleneck that exists today for just the reasons Rob explained earlier. So a couple of things that I found interesting in the presentation is that someone said SANDAG leaders are doing something bold. And I just want to share with you that the citizens of Santee are also doing something bold, and we have the Highway 52 Coalition. So regardless of what SANDAG does or doesn't do, we're still moving forward with our plan. And we just hope that SANDAG will join us one day and bring funds to the table to help us, because we're not stopping. We're going after those funds to fix our freeways. And then the other thing I'd like to share is something that someone from SANDAG said to me, which I found concerning. It's one thing to have a vision and build things, kind of like. Sure. It's one thing to have a vision and build things and hope that people will come, but I'll tell you, as when I said I don't feel safe on the trolley as a female, and I don't want my daughters don't feel safe on the trolley. There's just a lot of women that don't feel safe riding on the trolley. And someone from SANDAG said, well, it's our responsibility to build it, and it's MTS's responsibility to make it safe. I think there really needs to be a shift in the mindset there, because I heard you say you want safe transportation, and it needs to be the #1 priority, or this will never work.
Absolutely. I'm sorry that you hear this at SANDAG, but I take responsibility for that. Our safety is top priority for the people that live here. Not only in Santee, but all over the region.
Okay, so those are my comments, and then I'll wait for you to come back at a later date.
Be happy
Thanks.
to come back. Thank you.
Steve, you have something for us?
Well, I think you've probably heard from Ron a lot, and so I guess maybe I'll be the closer. All right. Well, well, thanks for coming out, and it must be rough going to all these different council meetings, and probably.
This is the fun meeting. The other ones are rough.
Yeah, that's not what I saw in the news. But so thanks for coming to this region and spending 6 months to try to deal with our terrible problem in traffic that didn't take 6 months to create. It took a lifetime to create. Now looking at the 5 bold moves. I mean, great. I remember when I was going to nursing school, and and we've had all these ideas, and San Diego had ideas about transportation, and and the trolley coming to Santee, and it was going to change everything. And yeah, well, it changed things, but it didn't change it in quite the way we were hoping. Right. And so there are some concerns, with that history, with the trolley not being quite as much of a utility as it might have been. Sold to us in the past. But, I bought into it all, really, especially when I was a young person and going to school. In fact, I didn't even have a car. I rode my bike to school. And I rode my bike everywhere. But, yeah, I get hit by a car. So, yeah, it's you can really commit to something But there's the reality, and the reality is, at least for me, every day I drive up, and I'm one of those people in that going to Kearney Mesa corridor, and I'm one of the people that actually loaded up the app that actually provided the data so that you knew where we were going. And so I put that app on my phone, and I allowed it to track me and what I call the 52 challenge. I think Ron stole my thunder and told you that. And so that's, we have the Mission Trails 5 Peaks challenge, but it's almost a 6 peak challenge because we have the 52 issue. And Rob was correct about the issue that we have with it being, it's a goods movement corridor. A lot of those goods are garbage, but sanitation is important and it must occur. And there is no form of public transportation that's ever going to move everyone's garbage.
I agree.
So there has to be special consideration taken into that concept, especially with the limited lifespan of the Miramar landfill. I know that that has been extended. However, when it does end, we expect a larger influx of the leftovers of most of San Diego's garbage. In addition, there's the potential for for OTI and the border to start to increase the size of the border crossing, especially potentially at the 125. And so we're looking at the potential of having a whole bunch of goods coming through that goods movement corridor. Again, and that cannot be remedied through any sort of public transportation. Many cities around the world and in the United States have a beltway system. And the 52 and 125 likely form part of a beltway. And so that needs to be taken into special consideration when you're prioritizing the movement throughout the county and throughout the city of San Diego. The initial plans for the 52, when I first looked at them and saw that our great savior was going to be 2 managed lanes going down the middle of the 52, and I said, oh, great. So really there was no plan. And so scrapping the original plan actually, as much as it sucks, there was no real traffic mitigation for the people of Santee, because it would have been managed lanes going through the middle, and likely we would have not been able to get onto those lanes. So there was concerns. I had concerns of the original plan, if it had even come to fruition in the first place. The $1 billion plan was unlikely to occur anyway. So I'm open to look at the 5 big moves. I think we're already stuck at the complete corridors issue, so good luck with that one. The transit leap would be great. The trolley is definitely, it's not the solution. It's a novelty, and it's nice to have. Coming home from maybe a concert at Petco, like maybe Paul McCartney, something of that nature. Then it's great. But no way am I going to take it to work, nor will I be riding my bike over the 52. Mobility hubs. If our mobility hub is what we have currently, it's not a hub. It's it's a place as a terminus for a trolley to turn around and leave. So we don't have that at this point. Flexible fleets and last mile options, that is important. So even if there was a trolley system that could take me over to the County Board of Supervisors, I would still need another to finish my commute with another mile. And I'm not going to take one of those little bird scooters in a business suit. I think you guys, how you're dressed tonight, you might not look quite right. But I have seen people downtown riding those things around in suits. But we're not going to do that. But that technology that we need I don't think it exists. So we're forward thinking. That's great. But I think we don't have those flexible fleets aside from Rob's ideas. And then, of course, the next operating system we're always hoping for. So willing to listen. I hope that you reach out to me since you have my information. And I think you've already gotten the other bad part. But thank you.
I appreciate the comment, and I just want one comment. I don't think I agree 100% with you that the trolley is not the system that we're talking about here, because it's not fast enough, it's not frequent enough, it doesn't go where people want to go. So everything you're going to see will be a commuter rail, a heavy rail, subway kind of system for the reasons you mentioned. The scooter, I did ride the scooter once just to say I did it, and I will never do it again. So
It's quite dangerous.
so thank you.
The thing to understand is it's the pain we feel on a daily basis, and so you're going to have very deep skin and very thick skin, because when we suffer and all it takes is one car to not, they don't have to be broken down, just someone to pull over. And it really slows down and congests the whole situation. We have these large cranes. We have, all sorts of stuff. We have the Hanson's Quarry. So make sure you take that into consideration, because we're not going to move sand either on mass transit. So. But thanks, guys.
Ron.
All right. I'll be real quick and easy. You've already heard my complaints too, so I'll make this very easy. I think Ray said it takes 2 hours. I don't know if you're going back and forth to MTS, but MTS takes to Petco Park. Takes an hour and 15 minutes on the green line, 50 minutes on the orange line. But as Laura had mentioned, you're taking your life in your hands. I'm on MTS. I've taken both lines. The nice thing about it is when you're going down there on MTS, to MTS, on the orange line, it takes about the same time in morning traffic to get there. The problem is normally I have to be somewhere at noon, and if I'm lucky, we get out at 11:30 or 12. And so therefore, it takes that same 50 minutes to get back, where I can drive in 25. So, and that's what you're talking about. That's what we need to work on. So, and then, like I said, safety is one that it's my job to work on that, and I have been working on that. They don't have enough guards right now is their problem, and that's part of what's going on there. They can't hire enough people to take care of those. There is an access taxi now where they actually pick you up. The access bus costs $50 to pick you up and take you to your doctor's appointment, where a taxi costs $25 to take your doctor. And I think you guys know this already. Yes. So these are already happening, and they are working on things like that. So that's one way of bringing it down. My concern when I brought this up on the border crossing, there is a third border crossing coming through. And when we did our study, I think I mentioned, did we consider the 125? And the answer is no. He said, they're just going to go to the 5. And I would like that reopened as we bring this up, because traffic will go, they're talking about a toll coming through where they pay the toll automatically, and then they come up to 125. And Ducheney had said, oh, they're just going to go to the 8. It's like, no, they're going to go, and the city manager's having to remind her, they're coming straight up the 52, the 125 to the 52 to the 15 that has those, 12 lanes now that's full of traffic that they fixed and didn't solve the problem either, plus the bus lane. And so so that's a good example that you can use. That's why we're going to need to work on a total aspect in the long run. In 7 years ago, or 12 years ago, these didn't exist. 12 years from now, we're all going to be in those cars, whether we think we are or not. These cars are going to be driving themselves, 15 tops. And so we will have that access.
Be much safer by then.
Probably, especially with my driving. But the reality is so these will be happening. These things will be happening. And I know that's what you're trying to do. But again, the 52 is our concern here. And I think a little bit of El Cajon. You've listened to Diane and Steve, so 67. And, La Mesa's 125. It sounds like you're fixing the 125/94, though, so that's good on that one.
Well,
so
they're
those
doing
are
a study. They're not fixing it.
No, studying to fix it. Sorry about that. So I had seen on the plans, and maybe Colleen can answer this one, it was trolley to the 15. Was that part of the plan, or was I?
There's no trolleys anywhere in the plan right now.
Okay, I thought, what was that?
There is either commuter rail or heavy rail.
Okay.
Some of the purple line you see that goes to Oceanside and splits on the 15, that's a commuter rail. And the first segment, many mile, proposed to be a tunnel subway.
Okay, so whatever is going to go to the 15 from Santee, that doesn't do him any good because he's sitting there on the 15 going, now what? And it doesn't do the poor guys running out to Serrano Valley any good. So what we need to do is...
The purple line, though, will take him to his job.
I'm sorry?
The purple line, the one that's subway, goes to Oceanside, goes right to Kearney Mesa, and goes to Sorrento Valley.
Okay, well, hopefully, if we ever get that going, but yeah. So those are things that I see in the long term will do, but again, right now, I think we're a little concerned about just getting to work in our lifetime, not our kids' lifetime. So that's something that we're trying to work on right now, and I think you guys need to keep that in mind as we're planning this. A lot of those 52 fixes could be done tomorrow, frankly. And, you know, there is a lane there. You move the line over. You know, I've offered to go out on a Sunday night and with a can of paint someday and help out. But there are things like that can be done that are very easy to fix. And yes, later on it goes back in there, but it puts another 150, 200 cars up the road, and that's kind of our idea. So those, and again, you've heard all my other complaints. I won't go into any more detail, but those are some things that we would like to get looked at too.
Thank you for the comment.
Thank you. Marlene just reminded me that our environmental impact report for 52 will be completed next year, so we'll be ready to get the money that you have for freeways to help us out. And also, I got to tell you, Ray, I really liked your slides here, because I don't think we've actually seen those, or I don't remember seeing it that detailed before. Can we get a copy of that, at least digitally? I know we have it on a...
Yeah, you have a copy of that. Yeah, we have a copy.
Digital. That was quick. That's the fastest thing you've ever done for me. I appreciate it.
How about if I put some information specifically on Santee together for you?
That would be perfect.
Okay, so I have that too, so I'll drop it off.
Okay, great. And, you know, once again, we appreciate the fact that you want to come out here, even with some of the press that's been out there lately. We want our people that live in our city to hear what you have to say. We want them to hear what we have to say. And I got to tell you that just listening to this council tonight can let anybody know that we are informed about what's going on with transit and other types of transportation, and that we're looking for a well-balanced system, something that is convenient, something that is economical, because if we can't afford to get on some other kind of transportation, then we might as well not even have it in our region. I'm just going to end up with my biggest concern is that if we become a true hub in Santee, is if we have people coming from truly from the urban areas and rural areas and into Santee, how are they going to get here? How many cars what are we going to have to do for parking and things of that nature? Because that's going to be a major impact to the city, and we don't necessarily have all the space for that. And so keep that in mind as you start developing this, that we're going to want to know how that's going to happen and without a major negative impact. So I'm going to leave you with that and say thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, here's what I like to do.